Let's go! Come on, come on! Hey! Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, yeah, yeah. It's time to make a difference. It's time to turn that page. We got to do the right things if we want brighter days. Cause things ain't getting easy and the road ahead is tough. It's up to you and I to make the madness stop. Every day the things getting harder, and every day the things getting rough, and every day they hike the food prices and they implementing more tax. For the sake of our twin nation and the youth of the next generation, let's stand united, show we're not divided. Let's show them now and send them a message now.
Show them that we're the voice of hope.
Send them a message now.
Show them that our country ain't no joke.
Send them a message now.
Show them that we're the ones who care.
Send them a message now.
Oh, 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 yeah, yeah.
From a distance, look at the picture. Tell me what you see. An abstract of destruction to destroy you and me. We got to do the right thing. We got to make that move. Cause if we don't act fast on this, we're the ones who lose.
Every day the things getting harder, and every day the things getting rough, and every day they hike the food prices and they implementing more tax. For the sake of our twin nation and the youth of the next generation, let's stand united, show we're not divided. Let's show them now and send them a message now.
Show them that we are the voice of hope.
Send them a message now.
Show them that our country ain't no joke.
Send them a message now.
Show them that we are the ones who care.
Send them a message now.
Oh, 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 yeah, yeah.
We stand united in the belief that if you empower community, the community empowers the country.
We are the party that gave every child a secondary school education since 2001.
By building more schools in 11 years than others did in 40. We believe that no child,
Rich or poor, should be left behind.
which is why we give every Form 1 student a laptop to expand their minds and their dreams.
We are the party that put police cars back on the streets.
And gave the police a $1,000 bonus because we believe that we should support the persons who are protecting you.
We are the party that reduced the murder rate to its lowest in 14 years. We expanded GATE, stopped the property tax, and increased maternity leave.
We are the party that invested in you and your community by investing in schools, community centers, lighted parks, 24-hour health centers, and the most extensive road repair program in decades.
We believe that education is always a solution and that no one should have to pick between sending their child to school or buying food.
We are the party that works for you. We are the first responders in every situation, working to deliver a better standard of living for you and your family.
And most importantly, we have confidence in you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is not a campaign, it's a movement based on building communities and strengthening families.
Come out and join us, and together we will get the nation working and moving again. Our children will once again have access to GATE and technology.
We will improve healthcare.
By cutting the time it takes to see a doctor in an emergency, we will establish a senior citizen unit in every major hospital and staff the hospital with the doctors and nurses you need. to create a first-class healthcare system. We will focus on creating high-paying jobs, fixing our laws to remove red tape, and ensuring that you and your family are safer. We will reduce corporate taxes to jumpstart the economy, create a special investment zone along the East-West corridor, and work with entrepreneurs to build a digital economy. This is an investment in your community to move the nation forward and get TNT working again.
Whether you are from 4th Street in Barataria to Railway Road in Dow Village, from Green Street in Tunapuna to Clark Road in DB, from La Hoqueta to Moruga, from Mayaro to Scarborough, we are one people with the same dreams of a better tomorrow. And when we stand together, we win together. We are UNC and proud.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the Opposition UNC's weekly press conference. This morning, I'm joined by Senator Anil Roberts, who is no stranger to all of you, to deal with critical issues affecting the national community in the area of education and in the area of public utilities and national security. As I mentioned before, these are critical issues that are currently affecting Trinidad and Tobago, and the opposition seeks to raise relevant questions, issues in the public space to demand answers on behalf of you, the citizens of our great country. I now introduce to you Senator Anil Roberts, who will take you through the paces in terms of the portfolio of education, as well as some aspects of national security, before I deal with the public utilities issues, as well as some national security issues as well. So please help me to welcome Senator Anil Roberts.
Thank you, my brother MP Barry Padarath, the MP for Princestown. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to the UNC soldiers. Soon you will have a choice to make between the PNM and the UNC. The PNM and the mass media cohorts and friends and colleagues try to pretend that the UNC and the PNM are the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. Today, I will begin with the education system and our children to show you the difference between the UNC and the PNM, between Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Keith Christopher Rowley. And you need to understand it. You need to put your minds to it. Let it become part of you in your decision making, because we try in Trinidad and Tobago since 1956, the PNM and its mass media friends try to create a politics of emotion, politics of race, politics of fear. Why do they do this? Because the PNM and in its ancestry, in its history, never wants to perform. They do not come there to make your lives better. They come there to enrich themselves, to create recusals, to control you, to control every aspect of life in Trinidad and Tobago. And in order to return, they need you not to think. They need you not to compare. They need you to be run by emotion. Race is emotive. Race is pure emotion. And therefore, your cognitive abilities are shut down. Trinidad and Tobago is a melting pot of races. We live, love together. We have different religions, races, ethnicities. We live next door to each other, and we have lived and will continue to live like that. Only when it's politics time, the PNM injects race. And we are here at the United National Congress, national party inclusive of everyone, every gender, every feeling, every emotion, to show you that the UNC under Kamla Prasad Bisesa is not only ready for government, but wants you to understand the stark differences between the PNM and the UNC. Our children have gone back to school, and you have seen across the board the dilapidated state of our nation's schools, especially those in the at-risk areas, especially those in rural communities. Why is this so terrible? Why in this, in essence, shows the heartlessness and the callousness of the PNM? Because education is life, education is competition, and children must be given a fair opportunity to achieve. Anytime you put any group of children at a disadvantage, it is painful, it is unfortunate, it is evil. That is the difference between Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Keith Christopher Rowley. To continuously leave our children at a disadvantage across Trinidad and Tobago, while gallivanting and running all around the globe on your taxpayers' dime, is simply heartless. The reason for this difference that you will understand is in leadership. The PNM is rudderless and leaderless because their leader, in essence, in his being, is a weak human being. He's a pathetic little man. He has low self-esteem, and he tries to pretend with bravado and bullying that he is some strong man. A strong man does not need to bully smaller people or people that he's in charge of, to bully employees, to threaten, to shout, to ridicule media, journalists, to use their power and their position to abuse others. Kamla Prasad Bisesa is a strong woman, a woman with self-esteem who knows where she came from. She's proud of her heritage. She's proud of her Trinbagonianism, and that's why her policies and her leadership style is starkly different from that of Keith Rowley. Kamla Prasad Bisesa was a poor girl from the Southland, one uniform to wear to school, sometimes no shoes. She knows what it is to be poor. She elevated herself from poverty without electricity in hard times to become a national scholar, to become an educated human being, to become the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And she never forgot where she came from. She's proud of her heritage, proud of those who helped her, proud of all the religious groups that stimulated her mind, that impacted her being. And therefore, when she steps up as Prime Minister, she implements policies to assist children to do the same that she did. She did not get up there and feel insecure. Rowley's insecure. He's insecure with himself, insecure with his character, insecure with his being, insecure with his intelligence, insecure with who he is. And therefore, his leadership shows that. He professes to be a Prime Minister of the PNM. And that's all he is, a Prime Minister of his cabinet. When you see, for example, the healthcare system that is in shambles, we have children and citizens dying of dengue. The healthcare system, nurses are under pressure. The healthcare workers have not been paid. The NIS contributions up to 80 million have not been paid. There is suffocation in our hospitals. Citizens cannot see doctors for hours. There is a lack of medicine. There are murders occurring in our hospitals at a frequent level that we've never seen before. The PNM is employing gangsters in the hospitals, and the hospitals are now not where you go to get life-saving treatment. They are where you go to get shot under the PNM. And that cannot be acceptable. While Keith Rowley tells you that the health system is the best in the Commonwealth, but he flies out to get his medical tests elsewhere. That is like a janitor cleaning a bathroom and refusing to use it. If a janitor refuses to use the bathroom that he or she cleaned, then you know that that janitor is not good. If Rowley is in charge of the healthcare system for 9 years and refuses to even take medical tests in the healthcare system that he is in charge of, that shows you that he admits that he's incompetent, that he's callous, that he's heartless, that he does not care about you and your family, whether you're black, Indian, mixed, Douglas, Chinese, Venezuelan, whoever you are, man, woman, or child, Rowley says, you use what I have left there for you, that I have no confidence in, while I go and see about myself elsewhere in other systems, other medical hospitals, other doctors who've been given the equipment, the technology to make sure that I am healthy. That is the attitude and the policy of a little man, of a weak man, of a man with no self-esteem, a man with no courage. The school system, our schools, from Point 14 to Matlot, Toko to Shagaramas, Dago Martin to Couva, Princess Tongue to Barrackpore, and all in between. Our schools, we are seeing videos of the dilapidated state of our nation's schools once again. For the 9th consecutive year, the PNM is simply incompetent. They cannot maintain. One must understand that it is not just about maintaining in the 2 months, and you can see the videos as I talk, you look at it. Don't take my word for it. Take the word of the citizens, of the teachers, of the parents, of the people who are suffering under this PNM. This sort of incompetence is not 2 months incompetence. This is systemic incompetence of the PNM, because you cannot arrive at this situation just in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. The sort of depreciation, degradation, and demise of our schools shows a total and complete neglect. No management, no systemic management systems in place to see, to maintain, to take in front, to prevent, no preventative measures, no proactive steps to ensure that our nation's schools just simply need touching up during the summer vacation. All is left to collapse, endangering the health and safety of our children. And then we sit here and the Minister of Education in our arrogant tones attacking the MP for Sawa Barataria as St. George's College, one of the best colleges in Trinidad and Tobago, close to the constituency of St. Joseph, is dilapidated after 2 years being shut down and closed down. And teachers are saying, but the work has not been done. The minister says $2 million was spent, $20 million spent on repairs, and there's not enough money. There is not enough money to take care of our nation's schools. Imagine that. But there is enough money. And some of y'all are asking, when Kamala Prasad Bisesa lays out her manifesto and her programs, where is she going to get the money from? Well, just at the end of my contribution, I'm going to show you where a prime minister with heart, a prime minister with her priorities correct, a prime minister who ensures value for money, a prime minister who understands that the taxpayers' money belong to you, the people, where she will get the money from. Keith Rowley in 9 years has spent $500 billion, $500 billion, and yet some of you have the audacity to say where he get the money from. He has had the money, he has spent the money, and every single thing has collapsed and is failing. Our country is in total abject chaos. It is systemic incompetence of the PNM. I'm going to detail the education system, but if you look at your roads, those potholes, the sinkholes now that are damaging cars, the tires you are bursting on, holes that when you hit it, you feel you reach Australia, those did not just appear. It came from systemic incompetence, lack of maintenance, lack of care, lack of preparation, lack of implementation, lack of planning. The PNM simply does not care. When you see the hospitals in a total mess and you cannot get oncology drugs, you cannot get dialysis, people have to wait 12 hours while the children are dying. That is systemic incompetence. These things could be prevented with preparation, planning, and spending of taxpayers' money in the right manner. When you see flooding after 12 minutes of rain, not heavy rainfall, 12 minutes of rain in Port of Spain, and Port of Spain is underwater. That is incompetence. They're now discussing cleaning the drains under Port of Spain. For 9 years, they've left the drains clogged. Anyone in Port of Spain will see that when it rains, the flooding comes from underneath. The water shoots up through manholes, through gaps, through holes. The drains flow out from underneath onto the surface and flood Port of Spain. They start to talk about this problem cannot be mitigated. It's about the tides and nonsense. They call the United National Congress the box drain government. We are proud of that because box drain, maintenance of drains, gully suckers, cleaning out the drainage, making sure that water has an ability to flow smoothly, dredging river mouths. This prevents people from losing their property and damaging their houses from flooding. So the box drain government is about people, about providing you with peace of mind and saving you money from the damages and ravages of flooding. When you see WASA, which Barry Padarath will come here to talk to you about, talking about leaks, since 2017, 4 million, I'm sorry, I am absolutely wrong, 4 billion gallons of water per month is lost by leaks when WASA tries to pump water to you. And then they tell you, but it's drought. What drought? You could lose 4 billion gallons of water per month through leaks. And minister come, minister go. The leaks keep increasing. Down in Diego Martin, near me, they fixed one leak 5 times and it leaking again last week. That is over $400,000 to fix one leak that's still leaking. That is PNM incompetence. It is systemic incompetence from a lack of leadership. A leader selects people in their own likeness. Rowley is incompetent, heartless, and callous, and his ministers are incompetent, heartless, and callous. Gadsby Dolly, arrogantly talking to Saddam Hussein and other children. Randall Mitchell stoops in at a lady who wants a house. Call me but laughing at you as he takes away your subsidy and taxes you tax after tax and cannot account for your money. Terence Dialsing, the worst minister of health in the history of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, the minister of death, buying snow cone and feeling that that is saving the country as our babies die in the NICU. Dengue. Dengue is something that is preventable with planning, with implementation, with provision of resources to the insect vector, with monitoring, with simple management strategies. Dengue can be prevented, yet we have 7 deaths from dengue that we know of, and countless cases. They say it's 1,000 cases. You know that you, the citizens, we don't report. So if you see 1,000 cases, you have to multiply by 10. It's probably 10,000 cases of dengue. Just yesterday at the tennis court, a parent was telling me that she knows about 4 members of her family in different areas of the country suffering from dengue. Dengue is preventable. The reason mosquito killing us is because the PNM is killing us. The PNM's incompetence is killing us. Now, when you see that schools are left to rot, that children have to miss a minute, an hour, half a day, a full day, 2 days, a week of school, understand how critical it is. I am going to put on my Olympic coaching hat now. The abject total failure at Olympics Tokyo 2021 and Paris 2024 was not a mistake. It was a well-designed PNM failure, lack of investment, lack of understanding, lack of care, putting a minister who didn't want to be the minister of sport, not understanding and respecting athletes, not understanding coaching, science, preparation. You cannot fail so dramatically by mistake. The PNM systemic failure is guaranteed, especially in something like the Olympics that rewards merit. So I tell you that when we talk about teaching, teaching and coaching go hand in hand. To teach children, teachers require the best facilities, The teachers normally make up for gaps in parenting, discipline, punctuality, self-esteem, ability, concentration. And if the teachers cannot perform, and if students who are already at risk, who are already behind because they do not have the advantages of middle-class families with proper doctors and medicine and music and education and stimulation and laptops. If Kamla Prasad was there, and when she comes back, all children will get their tablets and their laptops, so that she wants every child to compete fairly. For a government to look at one child and leave them at a deficit, knowing full well that 11, 12, 13 years old, there's a competition coming and all children have to compete on an even playing field. That shows the callous nature of the PNM government. So when a child has to miss a day of school, it's like an Olympic athlete missing a day of training. You miss one day, you miss 2 days, while the athletes from the USA, from China, from Germany, from Australia are training hard with their coaches with the best science, best recovery, best diet, massage. You will lose. We are setting up our children for failure because of the PNM's incompetence. Tim Gopi Singh, the Minister of Education under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, not only did he build 106 schools, but every summer holidays, he prepared, repaired, and got schools ready at a rate of 97% across Trinidad and Tobago. Right now, the PNM is batting at 68 to 71%. Some schools will not open properly. In Mayaro and Point 14, as you saw in those videos, how could you expect our children to go there and succeed? Children should go to school. School should be an oasis not only of education, but of comfort, technology. They should boost their self-esteem. Children in at-risk areas should be proud to go into their schools and see air condition, the best facilities, the best sports facilities, the best music room, the best computer labs, the best teachers ready to help them overcome any deficits at home and the community. We need to feed them. The PNM is not even feeding our children. They cut school feeding under Tim Gopi Singh. There was 76,000 by 2 because they like to play the fool. PNM likes to think that when I say 76,000, it's 76,000 breakfasts, or as the PNM would say, breakfasts, and 76,000 lunches for children every day was under Tim Gopi Singh and Kamla Prasad Bisesa. The PNM cut that down to 51,000 before COVID, 51,000 breakfasts and 51,000 lunches. Then during COVID, they dropped it down to 28,000. The PNM saw that as an opportunity to save money from feeding children. How heartless, how abhorrent, how disgusting. You cannot vote for that. There's no race in starvation. There's no race in taking resources from children and putting them at a disadvantage. Tim Gopi Singh built 106 schools. Remember when Keith Rowley as Prime Minister, in front of his own cabinet and ministers, and they're so clueless, so uninformed, he questioned and asked the media to ask Tim Gopi Singh and Kamla where the 106 schools. Do you all recall that? Now understand, when you have a job to do, you first have to be able to do the job. You have to have goals and set dream goals and so on. So if Rowley could not believe that Tim Gopi Singh and Kamla built 106 schools in 5 years, that is why he has not built a school. He built 3 schools in 9 years, and 3 of them went overrun. Take a little listen, because Tim Gopi Singh went in the parliament and answered Rowley, but the media likes to keep it a secret. Do you understand that a prime minister could be so dishonest, could lie, and when the truth came out, ignore it and move on? Rowley is pathological because he's a small man. He has low self-esteem and he's insignificant. Take a little listen to this. I can't play the whole thing because Tim Gopi Singh, boy, you real build school for the people. Run it.
When you hear Mrs. Prasad Bisesa say that they built 100 schools while they were in office, I heard of that nonsense last week again. They built 100 schools. I want to ask the media to ask Mrs. Prasad Bisesa to give you, the media, a list of the 100 schools that they built when they were in government.
Thing that he spoke about on the political platform approximately a week or week and a half ago, and that is that he wanted us from the opposition to give him the list of schools that we have constructed during our period 2010 to 2015. But it is incumbent for me, as the former Minister of Education, to give the names of the schools because the Honorable Prime Minister has asked for the lists of the schools. Under the management of Mrs. Bisesa as Prime Minister, the Ministry of Education constructed and completed 69 early childhood education centers, 31 primary schools, 6 secondary schools. In addition, additional blocks were built at another secondary school. And for answering the Prime Minister's question, the 31 primary schools completed, and it will include those schools that were opened in 3 of the sitting ministers now in government, including the Prime Minister. The Rosilac Presbyterian Primary School, Riversdale Presbyterian, Tunapuna Government Primary, Balmain Presbyterian, Pinal Rock Road SDMS, Mount Pleasant GPS Soledad Road North Claxton Bay, Palo Seco Government Primary School, Lengua Presbyterian Primary School, Arima New Government Primary School, Tulsa Trace SDMS, Barrackmore Asja Rees Road Barrackmore, St. Barbara Spirit Hill Shouter Baptist, Echo Village Anglican Primary School, Monkey Tongue Government Primary School, Febo Village Government Primary, Enterprise Government.
And Honorable Tim Gopi Singh under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, he went on for 8 minutes to show pictures of every single one of the 106 schools that Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Tim Gopi Singh built across Trinidad and Tobago, as well as every year of the 5 years between 2010 and 2015, making sure that all the schools were refurbished, were renovated, and ready for our children. The UNC and the PNM are not the same. And some of you ask, how is Kamla going to do it? What money is she going to do it with? Let me tell you that Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Tim Gopi Singh did that, using and utilizing less money in 5 years and 3 months than Rowley utilized in 5 years and 3 months. And up to now in 9 years, Rowley has spent more than any prime minister in the history of this country, and nothing works. Let me also show you as I wrap up now. It will take about 2 minutes to wrap up because it's plenty. I'm going to show you how PNM wastes money, how Rowley wastes money, how the PNM cannot stand next to the UNC, how Kamla Prasad Bisesa is going to provide food cards and open the gate back up to 58,000 children per year and spend money on you and return fuel prices so that you could generate revenue, so that your money could spread, that will reduce food prices, increase agricultural output, get more acreage of land under cultivation. Kamla Prasad Bisesa will do it with less money than Rowley has spent, with less money that Rowley has borrowed. They tried to play games with the books, with the Auditor General, to fabricate 3.4 billion in revenue, which does not exist, to borrow money to steal. That's what the PNM did. They also spent 1 billion without accounting for it. Let me give you some of the corruption and wastage just off the top of my head. This is not any exhaustive list. I didn't go and research and go through papers, and I just took it off of my head. Bridgman's crooked money with the ferries, with the De La Valette, with the Cobo Star, 300 million and counting. Atlantic LNG, to keep Train 1 alive through maintenance, 233 million for 1 year, but they kept it for 4 years, 410 million. Bagatelle sporting ground that they said that they needed, but they use it for stick fighting and car park, 225 million. and Rowley's golfing partner, SRI, is the contractor. I see that they're bulldozing crops to go and do phase 2 and build a swimming pool. Do you know Diamond Vale have a 25-meter swimming pool? So within 1 mile, Rowley building another swimming pool. He loves swimming pool. After Mamagain, Lavanti, Maloney, and Dabadi with 25-meter 6-lane swimming pool. Another 131 million for Skinner Park, turning it from a great stadium into nonsense. 120 million Galleons Passage, 300 million for 2 cutlass vessels that park up and mash up and not patrolling. 143 million for a car park, 216 for Ministry of Health building. 118 million wasted on President's House. 57 million to go and watch movie in the zoo. 220 million spent on the Brian Lara Cricket Academy that was already $1 billion overrun with PNM. 105 million for Commonwealth Youth Games of 7 sports. 1.2 billion for airport terminal in Tobago when the current airport is running at 20% capacity. It could take 100,000 visitors per year, and there are only 20,000 visitors per year now. $7 million per year for Dragon Gas with Maduro, who just thief our election. 135 million with the IFC with Stuart Young father, and they have no IFC, no investment. 6 million for half a golf course, 3 million for paintings, 24 million for 3 years travel between Rowley and Stuart Smallpin Young to move all over the country, all over the world, negotiating with goods and service providers. $100 million wasted in the Dabadi housing project, which collapsed. 25 million for Vincent Nelson to concoct and manufacture lies on UNC. 118 million fake oil arbitration that was not appealed, that was paid to Rowley friend who bareback and cussing all over the place. 50 million for a lobbyist in USA. We here lobby nothing, we sitting in the lobby waiting for Rowley to go. The Prime Minister's residence, 44 million in Tobago. The Diego Martin interchange for mosquito that nobody uses, 165 million. Rental for the DPP office, which the DPP never used, 55 million. Expert reports on Petrotrin, 64 million, ignored by Rowley, and he shut down Petrotrin even though he lied to you. 164 million, some NGC project they were doing, and then they realized they didn't need it. 14 million for 9 years, AstroTurf, which now dry rot and cutting up. Nikwan, 500 million US in losses to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, from PNM to PNM Permanent Secretary to PNM Financier, PNM Gas, Minister's Gas. 1 million in wooden ladders that soft. 38 million outfit Faris Al-Rawi building and 46 million in rent. $1 billion withdraw the case from Malcolm Jones that was in the Privy Council that Kamla Prasad Bisessan and Anand Ramlogan had that to recoup your money. 22 million in a loss file because the AG is incompetent and lazy. 12 million for CARICOM crime talks and more crime come after. The Coover Children's Hospital, lost machinery, lost technology, $100 million wasted. 200 million in wasted COVID vaccines. 7 million in COVID for CPL with nothing to market, no planes flying. 200 million over payment for a leaking Red House. 10 million by 225-meter pools to Mamagai people. They're making 6-lane pool 3 feet deep, useless. 3 million security for non-functional pools across the country. 75 million wasted on fixing leaks that's still leaking. $1 billion stolen and unaccounted for 2023, the Auditor General report. 143 million for new social development offices when people can't even get food card. Countless millions wasted changing with money from normal to polymer. Now, millions and millions on the coat of arms to change. That total, just off the top of my head, is $6.3 billion thrown away, flushed down the toilet, wasted by Keith Rowley and the PNM. So when Kamla Prasad Bisesar says, with prudent management, with heart and soul, with competent ministers, with a cabinet of intelligence, she is going to perform for the people, that's part of where the money is going to come from. On top of, I didn't even talk about her revenue streams that she will increase by diversification and so on. So stop talking nonsense. The PNM and the UNC are not the same. The PNM has systemic incompetence, systemic laziness, systemic heartlessness, systemic callousness. Vote Kamala Prasad Bissessa and the United National Congress. I thank you very much, and I bring, without any delay, the Member of Parliament for Princestown and the Shadow Minister of Public Utilities, the Honorable Barry Padarath.
Thank you, Anil, for that very comprehensive presentation as it relates to the issues surrounding the education sector. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, one of the issues with respect to the public utility sector that has been in the public domain has to do with the recruitment of a new Chief Executive Officer of WASA. And I want to say off the bat that the opposition has no issue with any CARICOM or foreign national taking up the position once proper process was used in determining who that person to fill the void would be. I want to say this morning that the opposition agrees fully with the PSA that changing the CEO of WASA will bring no change in terms of underfunding and political interference at WASA. I took notice that the PSA president has lamented the conditions at WASA and has no faith, trust, or confidence that the new CEO will bring about any real tangible change, particularly since we have seen the collapse, the systemic collapse of WASA over the last 4 to 5 years in particular. I have been raising in the public space the issues related to public utilities as it relates to TSCT, where you are seeing government driving TSCT into the ground through political interference and through underfunding. Up to this day, we are almost 1 year to the anniversary date of the cyber attack on TSCT, and there is still no report that has been forthcoming. I have raised this together. I've seen editorials in the newspaper. I have seen journalists ask the questions of the Honorable Minister of Public Utilities. But yet almost 1 year to the date, I think in October will make it 1 year since the cyber breach at TSCT, and there's no fulsome ventilation of this matter, while citizens of this country are at the mercy of criminals and those on the dark web in terms of getting their information. One of the issues as it relates to WASA that I want to raise this morning has to do with the filing of a freedom of information based on the process and remuneration for the new CEO at WASA, Mr. Halliday. The opposition has taken steps to request of WASA the process that was used, the consultants that were hired, the remuneration that has been offered and that will be paid to Mr. Halliday as a foreign national now occupying that position. I know many within the national community, it has been reported in many spaces, have been concerned about whether or not a Trinidad and Tobago national could have occupied that position. And while I started by saying that the opposition has no problem with any CARICOM national or any foreign national occupying the position, there must be transparency in the process. And therefore, we are left with a lot more questions than answers. Because when Mr. Halliday was selected, as we've been told, as the second person in line after the passing of the first selection, there was very little information in the public space that came from the Ministry of Public Utilities in terms of what process was used, what was the ranking, what were the areas that were interrogated to select this person, and most importantly, what will be the cost to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. I can tell you with certainty that the opposition has taken steps to fully ventilate this issue through a freedom of information. But the freedom of information does not stop there. For the past 4 months, the opposition UNC has raised several critical issues affecting WASA through a freedom of information request. And I want to start off so it puts it into context of what we are dealing with here today. It has to do with statements coming from the chairman of WASA on April 21st, 2024, where we were told that there will be 9 new WASAs at managers at WASA coming in, that their terms and conditions will be determined by the cabinet in terms of their remuneration and that package. But they also went on to say, as reported in the Trinidad Guardian on April 21st, 2024, that 8 out of the 9 managers at WASA had already been recruited. Therefore, as a responsible opposition, in light of there being no information forthcoming, the opposition, through myself as a spokesman on public utilities issues, filed a freedom of information. This freedom of information requested several critical pieces of information, and I will go through that. First, it was dated the 29th of May, 2024, and it asked, please indicate how many employees have been terminated or contracts not renewed at WASA during the period October 2023 to April 2024. The second one, please indicate how many employees at WASA have been offered VSEP from October 2023 to April 2024. 3, please provide the names and curriculum vitae of the 9 new senior executives that have been recruited by WASA to oversee its restructuring process. Please see attached article, Guardian, April 21st, 2024. Please identify the recruitment process used to hire the 9 senior executives and indicate if the positions were advertised, and if so, please provide the internal memo and external advertisements. 5, please indicate the names of all who applied, copies of the CV, copies of all interview questions and scores they received. 6, please indicate whether WASA has recommended to the cabinet a remuneration package for senior executive. If it is in the affirmative, kindly provide a detailed breakdown of the information. This freedom of information request also requested WASA, pursuant to statements made by the chairman of WASA, kindly provide a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding signed between NGC and WASA to assist with pipelines, as well as a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding signed between WASA and Lake Asphalt for road restoration. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hold in my hand 3 letters, and I recently received a 4th one through our agent who filed the freedom of information. And in these 4 pieces of correspondence from WASA, on the 3rd occasion, they are in breach of the Freedom of Information Act, and in fact has broken the law with respect to freedom of information. And they are now asking for a 4th extension. This morning, while we raise the critical issues in terms of how these 9 managers of WASA were recruited, because we were told that they were recruited, what was the process used? Because the Minister of Public Utilities is parroting that these 9 executives will now oversee WASA while they send home 200 senior staff, and they prepare themselves to send home thousands of workers. You would recall that in the budget debate of 2023, that the minister very callously, when I asked minister, how do you account for over $60 million being cut in the area of NIS for WASA? And the minister said, well, possibly yes, MP. It will be that persons are going home. And therefore, when we are asking the critical issues and the critical questions in terms of how many persons have been offered VSEP, how many persons have in fact gone home, how did you go about recruiting these 9 senior executives? Are they PNM party hats? Because we are very much aware, and the opposition is going to raise this in the public space, where we've had one PNM general election candidate holding a senior managerial position at WASA without due process having been followed. And therefore, when a memorandum of understanding has been signed between WASA and NGC in terms of additional pipelines, when you have a memorandum signed between Lake Asphalt and WASA, 4 months later after those grand announcements, there's no follow-up, there's no action, there's no sight of what are the terms and conditions outlined in the Memorandum of Understanding, while you continue to face no water in your taps, and while you continue to dodge potholes because there has been no road restoration through Lake Asphalt in terms of when WASA digs up your road and so on, WASA is now refusing on a 4th occasion to answer these questions. And this is what your opposition members have been doing. We have been responsible through our agents to file these freedom of information to find out how your tax-paying dollars are being spent, how they are conducting themselves in terms of memorandum of understanding between state entities, but yet there's no follow-up action. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters all, I want to turn your attention to another document. And this document is dated, today's date, penned under the hand of MP for Barataria San Juan Saddam Hussein. And I will read excerpts of this document because we intend on keeping our promise to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that we will stand in the gap for you to get the answers to the critical questions that the government refuses to answer. Because let us not misunderstand the situation. WASA is a state entity, and therefore the responsibility of WASA is a government responsibility. And the government essentially has broken the law by refusing to answer the questions as outlined in terms of the parameters of the Freedom of Information Act. And this is what it says. The pre-action letter, it says proposed judicial review, and it names the agent between that person and the Water and Sewerage Authority. And opposition MP Saddam Hussein, which I would like to credit him for working alongside me to get the answers and to send in this pre-action letter threatening judicial review. It says, in light of the fact that WASA has acted unlawfully and or ultra-virus by failing as it has failed and or refused to render decision in relation to our client's request, which was duty made under Section 15 of the Freedom of Information Act, which states, a public authority shall take reasonable steps to enable an applicant to be notified of the approval or refusal of his request as soon as practicable, but in any case no later than 30 days after the day on which the request is made. It then goes on to say, please be advised, our client has instructed us to file an application for judicial review against the Water and Sewerage Authority and claim for the following relief. 1, a declaration that WASA breached its statutory authority under Section 15 of the Freedom of Information Act to take reasonable steps to enable an applicant to be notified of the approval or refusal of a request in this case as soon as practicable, but in any other case no later than 30 days after the day on which the due request was made. 2, an order of the mandamus to compel WASA to render a decision with respect to the applicant's request within 7 days thereof which the application was being approved or refused in accordance with Section 15 of the Freedom of Information Act. 3, alternatively and or additionally, a declaration that the applicant is entitled to access the request information pursuant to their application under the Freedom of Information Act. 4, cost. 5, such further orders, directions to writs as the Honorable Court considers just and as the circumstances of this case warrant pursuant to Section 81D of the Judicial Review Act, Chapter 708. Ladies and gentlemen, the question must now be asked, what is WASA hiding? Why is WASA refusing to be accountable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago when we were told that these 9 senior managers that will now oversee this restructuring of WASA has already been recruited and a note has already been sent and is before the cabinet in terms of determining the remuneration? What is WASA hiding? Why is WASA refusing And essentially, why is the government refusing to be answerable and transparent as it relates to the Memorandum of Understanding signed between Lake Asphalt and WASA, as well as NGC and WASA? Because we were told that a road restoration program was forthcoming. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, you live and you see it every single day. You traverse these roads and you see the conditions of these roads. Sometimes, in many cases, it is because of works that were done by WASA and left there to languish in terms of road restoration. And we are now being told that in May of 2024, a memorandum was signed between WASA and NGC, WASA and Lake Asphalt. Yet up to this time, we cannot get sight of that memorandum of understanding. And we are now keeping our promise to you that the government must now tell us how they selected those 9 persons to oversee the restructuring of WASA. How much will they be paid? What was the process that was used? And it is our information that one of those persons is a former general election candidate for the People's National Movement. And therefore, the question must also be asked that the stymieing and the dragging of the feet by the government to make the announcements and to withhold the information from the opposition and those who file the freedom of information really has to do with the government refusing to answer these critical questions ahead of a general election. And I say to the population, as I say to the media this morning, that the population must go into these general elections with their eyes wide open. Their eyes must be wide open and they must be coherent in terms of understanding the information that is before them, particularly in the public utility sector, as it relates to impending water and electricity hikes. And therefore, it is incumbent on the government to ensure that the population goes into the general election with their eyes wide open by answering these critical questions in terms of the restructuring of WASA. Who will now oversee that restructuring process? What are the terms and conditions of this memorandum of understanding? Why, up to 9 years later, there are critical elements of repair and maintenance in terms of WASA's infrastructure that has not been addressed? I want to remind you that this is the same government who promised you 10 water modulated plants. This is the same government that promised us a desalination plant in Maruga because they believed that that will entice the people of Maruga. We are months, weeks away from a general election. And in 10 years, none of that has materialized. And therefore, it begs the question, what is the government hiding? What is WASA hiding in terms of answering these issues, in terms of how much it will cost and who will be responsible for the overseeing? And when will these thousands of workers be thrown on the breadline at WASA? Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the freedom of information issue that we have raised, there's another critical matter that the opposition wants to address this morning. And it has to do with a report from the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime. And the report is entitled Caribbean Gangs, Drugs, Firearms, and Gangs Networks in Jamaica, St. Lucia, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago. The report is dated July 2024. And the opposition has taken note that the government has been very, very, very silent on this issue. There has been no comment forthcoming. And you will see on your screens that the Trinidad Newsday has been among the few news agencies that have picked up this report. But I want to turn your attention to several critical issues that have not been ventilated with respect to this report and needs to be answered by the government. You see, the UN report on Caribbean gangs, drugs, firearms, and gangs networks in Jamaica, St. Lucia, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago reveals some very startling information. It speaks to the gang infiltration into Trinidad and Tobago and its impact in the areas of human trafficking, gun trade, drug trade, and serious violent crime. Trinidad and Tobago, on page 39 of your report, it says, has the highest per capita number of Venezuelan migrants in the world. I'll repeat that. This is not the UNC saying that, and I'll tell you why I went into the merits of the report in terms of what they are reporting. Because this government has spent almost 9 going on 10 years attempting to debunk what we all know with respect to the migrants here in Trinidad and Tobago. As I told you, page 39 of your report says that we have the highest per capita number of Venezuelan migrants in the world. And this report would have been presented prior to the general elections that was just concluded in Venezuela. So it does not take into context the eruption of scandal, electoral scandal that is happening in Venezuela. I want you to recall when the number of migrants was being bandied about in 2017, thereabouts, about being 60,000 migrants here in Trinidad and Tobago. I want you to look at page 39 of the report, because page 39 of the report says at least 60,000, at least 60,000 on page 39. And therefore, with the situation having developed in Venezuela, where the election is under question in terms of the conduct of the election, and many countries, including the United States, have refused to accept the results of that election because of claims of electoral fraud and so on. The report now says, prior to that election, at least 60,000 Venezuelan migrants are in Trinidad and Tobago. And you had Stuart Young standing outside the Oval on a bullhorn, talking to people, the Venezuelan migrants, in English when they speak Spanish. And when asked by the media about whether or not these claims were true, or whether or not there were 60,000, he said that they were grossly exaggerated. Well, today you are hearing it from the United Nations report. You're not hearing it from the UNC. Since 2015 to now, what has the government done to manage the influx of migrants? There's no policy. You know, Anil spoke about the schools. But Anil, after 9 going on 10 years, I see Gatsby Dolly, the Minister of Education, on the newspaper, boasting that after almost 10 years of over 60,000 migrants and their children here in Trinidad and Tobago, they have only been able to manage to put 23 children, migrant children, in the public school system. Now, where is the policy for them to live when we are hearing from the United Nations that over 60,000 of them are here? Those are confirmed numbers from the United Nations. So therefore, where's the policy for them to live? Where's the policy with respect to work? What is the policy with respect to healthcare? The UNC has been speaking about border control. The report also speaks to Trinidad being a transshipment point, where gangs, and I want you all to hear this carefully. The report says Trinidad and Tobago is a country where gangs exchange guns for food and drugs. And this is the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. Identifying Cedros, Icacos, Moruga as major transshipment points and also points of trade. Now, the question must be asked, now that the report has this startling piece of information that guns are being traded for food and drugs between criminals in Venezuela and criminals in Trinidad and Tobago. What is government's policy on Maduro? Because I will tell you, you have to contextualize this. If Maduro's regime and reign in Venezuela is causing severe hardship where people cannot get food, they cannot get basic medicine, and there are criminals and other persons who are trading guns narcotics, cocaine from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago nationals, then the question must be asked, what is the government's position on Maduro? Because Maduro has created those conditions in Venezuela to create that relationship of an illegal trade going on between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela in terms of drugs for food and guns for food. And that is what the report says. And the government has been very silent on that issue. And therefore, to be silent on that issue means that they are condoning it. When we had the issue of the election results coming out of Venezuela being proclaimed by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, when asked, the Prime Minister refused to answer. Trinidad and Tobago, both at the OAS and the United Nations, abstained from voting against Venezuela in terms of the sanctions as it relates to those questionable elections. And therefore, today, when we read from this report, Food for Guns, it clearly illustrates the crime condition and why the crime condition continues to persist the way it's persisting in Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to several heinous crimes. We have never seen heinous crimes. Just across the road in Maruga Tablana from me in Princestown, 2 teenagers chopped to death in the most vicious and savage way. A 5-year-old child in Maruga Tablana again, her father and herself shot. You can look at a 5-year-old child and shoot that child 5 times in her head. But when you read the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, you understand that while the government continues to dance in the Congo line with Maduro, their citizens in Venezuela are begging for food and medicine and are willing to exchange guns and drugs coming from Venezuela for that food. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one other issue that I would like to raise, and it has to do with what the report says. On page 36 of the report, it says that drug seizures in previous years are significantly underestimated to the extent of drug transport and trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago. And while we've seen from time to time the TTPS beating their chest about drug seizures and fines, the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime says on page 36 of the report that really you have nothing to beat your chest about, because what this tells you is that the numbers and the volume of transshipment is much higher than you estimate. And these, again, are not the words of the UNC. And I want you to pay attention to the report because it speaks about legal ports of entry and the challenges faced by the Coast Guard in terms of capacity. I want you to recall that when this issue was raised recently, it was Minister Hines who said that we did not have sufficient vessels to man the maritime borders of Trinidad and Tobago. Recently, when the Chief Secretary of Tobago House of Assembly raised that they will try to utilize fishing vessels to man the parameters in terms of the borders, not for long patrols and so on, but really to man the borders. The Minister of National Security came out and chastised the Chief Secretary for that. But the Chief Secretary said they are now at a stage where desperate times call for desperate measures. And today I want to ask the Honorable Minister of National Security, and you have 2 of them now. The report dated July 2024, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, is now telling you that a major reason why there's an infiltration of gangs, Venezuelan gangs in this country, that is working alongside and are the bosses of several of the local recruits and are also the bosses because it also implicates members of the TTPS, as well as the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, as well as the Coast Guard. And therefore, the Minister of national security must tell us. He must now comment on this report. Because again, this is not the UNC saying this. This is not any external local body saying this. This is an international agency that has put out a country report as it relates to drugs and crime, and is telling you that the infiltration of Venezuelan gangs and gangs from South America is the reason why the country is facing such a serious upsurge in crime. And therefore, the minister must tell us whether or not the diamond vessels that were procured under Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration, it wasn't one, It was 12 diamond vessels that were procured under Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration that would have navigated the waters of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that our borders did not remain porous. You would recall, Anil and others, that Rowley went on a campaign about these OPVs, that we shut down the OPVs. We shut down the OPVs because they were not conducive to the environment and for the purpose that we wanted them for. And therefore, when we procured the 12 diamond vessels, we did that to ensure, and they have identified in the report where the gangs are coming from. They are saying it's coming from Maruga, it's coming from Chaguaramas, it is coming from Icacos, it is coming from Cedros, and therefore, if they have identified in the report where these gangs are coming from, if you do not have sufficient assets, then deploy those assets that you do have, the 12 diamond vessels in these areas. And therefore, it is incumbent, because we have been told that these diamond vessels have been down for quite a while. We have been told that they have not been properly maintained, that sometimes it's because of a lack of fuel, and sometimes it is, if not all the time, a lack of political will. On the last issue, in terms of what the report says, I want to raise the issue of the scanners. The scanners, because the report speaks about legal points of entry. And I turn you to a Guardian article headlined, Imbert reveals August delivery date for 2 new port scanners. The Minister of Finance in the budget debate told us that we will get 2 new port scanners in Port of Spain. We will get 1,000 new police recruits. We will get $80 million for new police vehicles and $15 million for a riverine unit. I am calling upon members of the media to ask the Minister of Finance, where is the 2 new port scanners? Because we are in the first week of September, and there has been no announcement from government in terms of where those 2 new port scanners are. Where are we with respect to the 1,000 new recruits? And all of this was promised in the financial year 2023 to 2024. The financial year 2023 to 2024 will end at the end of this month. And therefore, while they have had an entire year to procure these new scanners, Imbert, it wasn't me, gave a deadline, a delivery date of August 2024. And therefore, while we continue to see the influx of illegal drugs, illegal guns, at legal ports, what is the government doing? And therefore, they're behaving as though they can make announcements and that we will forget. Both Anil and I have shared with you this morning several critical questions based on public utterances, based on public expenditure that the government has embarked upon or has not embarked upon, but actually just announced, that have really put citizens on the back foot. Because when this report tells you that there's serious Venezuelan gang infiltration and that there is gun trade going on, a narcotic trade going on in exchange for food, it tells you where our country has reached, but it also tells you that the government has mismanaged this situation. And as Rowley has told us, if you are not part of the problem, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Remember, it was that same Prime Minister who told us, if the government cannot fix the problem and cannot provide solutions, then the government itself is part of the problem. And therefore, this morning, the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime falls just short, a tad bit short of saying what the UNC will say, based on all that has been said in this report, in the areas of human trafficking, drug trafficking, gun trade for food, that today the influx of Venezuelan migrants, the influx of Venezuelan gangs, and the increase in serious crimes falls at the doorstep of the People's National Movement government. And therefore, we have taken great lengths this morning to raise some of the critical issues. Because as we go into the budget debate, the Minister of Finance, he can run, but he cannot hide. He must tell us, where are those 2 port scanners? August has come and August has gone. And the influx of illegal drugs and ammunition continue at legal ports. You continue to see porous borders, a lack of border control. You know, it was Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, and she keeps speaking about it, who has the plan when she tells us we must have a Ministry of Defense and you must have a Ministry of Homeland Affairs dealing with issues of customs and excise, issues of immigration. This report also speaks about the role customs and excise play. But there has been very little or nothing, a deafening silence coming from this government in terms of immediate steps taken to mitigate the challenges at customs and excise, at the Coast Guard, at the TTPS, at the ports. And these are critical issues that the government must answer. They cannot remain silent on these critical issues. I also raise the issues that we have sent a legal letter through Saddam Hussein this morning, the member for Barataria San Juan, with respect to judicial review on government withholding the information as it relates to the 9 senior managers that they announced with great fanfare, the remuneration, the process, and therefore we again ask, what is WASA and what is the government hiding? And it is incumbent on WASA and the government, as I've mentioned before, to ensure that citizens go into this general election with their eyes wide open. And therefore, we are taking the necessary steps, as we have promised to you, that even if it means taking them to court, we are so prepared to do. And the first real step to do that and perform that action has been taken this morning through our attorney, Saddam Hussein. So, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, we will now take questions, both Senator Roberts and myself, on any matters that we may have raised or any other matter in the public space that you wish to raise with us.
Hi, good afternoon. First question would be for Senator Roberts. You spoke about the state of schools in the area and the lack of readiness. But as coordinator for St. Joseph, do you have, I know there have been some issues there, so what's your comment on what you see?
Well, thanks for that. St. Joseph is worse than all of Trinidad and Tobago put together. You must understand that St. Joseph is burdened with a member of parliament who's not only incompetent as a minister of health, but is callous and heartless, just like Keith Christopher Rowley. In St. Joseph, there was a school that was brand new, 95% complete, by Tim Gopi Singh and Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, September 2015. 95% complete, spanking new school. It used to be the QREP Junior Secondary, the St. Joseph Secondary School. And since then, for 9 years, the PNM, the vindictive, malicious, wicked PNM, Terence Dial Singh, who I hear they're not even bothering to send him back up because he's going to get such a curtail. But whoever the PNM puts will lose to the UNC. UNC versus PNM in St. Joseph, because the people have seen for 9 years that school that was just needed air conditioning, just needed final touches. The entire structure. We saw Stefan Rees of Breaking Dawn go there 3 years ago and do an in-depth walkthrough. The roof has been stolen, everything been stolen, vandalized, mashed up, destroyed, all in St. Joseph. Also, the Mount Hope Secondary School is dilapidated. The Aranguez North Secondary that was built by Tim Gopi Singh requires maintenance and upkeep. They just don't have a plan. They just cannot. All the PNM wants to do, and all they've done for 62 years, is lie to the people, play games, get into power, steal money, and try to stay based on race, based on lies, based on emotion, based on a PNM media that spouts lies. Imagine some people are questioning Kamla Prasad Bisesa as a prime minister as opposed to Rowley. It's chalk and cheese. Kamla spent less money in 5 years and 3 months than Rowley spent in his first 5 years and 3 months. And yet you had GATE, you had 106 schools, you had aquatic center, sporting, cycling velodrome, you had 89 recreational grounds, you had community center, fire station, police station, your roads were smooth, you had water. Do you know that the PNM is now saying, Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities, is saying that his goal, if he gets re-elected, would be to get 74% 24/7 supply of water. So his goal is to be what Kamla was in 2014 with Ganga Singh. It was 74% 24/7 supply in 2014 under Kamla Prasad Bisesa. The PNM Rowley took water from 74% down to 12%. It now stands at about 18%. I'll wrap up there, but the PNM is just horrendous. You have to vote them out. The UNC is different because of our leader, because of our people, because of our intellect, because of our passion, because of our experience, and because the PNM just wants to get in there to recuse and to rent their own buildings and enhance and enrich the rich and their financiers. End of story. Get out, get rid, reject the PNM. Thank you very much. God bless. It's been a long press conference, but critical information. I want to thank my MP, Barry Padarath from Princestown, my other colleagues, the technical team. Thank you for paying attention, and look forward to all UNC events coming up. The UNC stands ready to take on the PNM. Your choice is simple. Vote for the PNM, heartlessness, incompetence, vindictiveness, systemic corruption, systemic incompetence, or vote for UNC. We have a question for Barry. Barry, come on.
Yeah, sorry, we have just one more question for MP Padarath. And I know last year you had spotted in the budget documents things about WASA and plans for retrenchment, etc. And then Colm Imbert also had his promises in the budget about these scanners, which you just called out. What do you expect in the budget this year in terms of repeated promises, etc.?
I believe that the government is in a holding position, having articulated all these plans for purchase and procurement under the various ministries. Very little action has occurred, and maybe it has to do a lot with the procurement legislation, in that they've gutted the procurement legislation. They've taken steps to gut the procurement legislation last year. And in preparation for all of that gutting, they are now in the last few months now realizing that having gutted the legislation, spent all of their time focusing on how they can work around the legislation, that they are just a few months away from a general election. And therefore, having accomplished nothing. You know, we always say promises never materialize. I tried this morning to put into context what it means to not have those 2 scanners that was promised in the budget, that Imbert promised, and it's on public record that it will be delivered in August. We're in the first week of September, and therefore we need a status update in terms of where those 2 scanners. And you know, when the government goes silent, you know it's because nothing is happening. And therefore, when the opposition raises these critical questions in terms of where the scanners to ensure that the drugs and the guns are not coming through our legal ports, as indicated by the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime, you know that very little or nothing will happen going forward. So critical area where Trinidad and Tobago is under siege. You know, Anil, people used to say long ago, things are getting bad. When you ask them how things, they'll say, boy, things getting bad. Well, I want to tell Trinidad and Tobago, things are not getting bad. Things are bad. Don't wait to say we are on the cusp of falling off the cliff. We have fallen off the cliff and we are tumbling deeper and deeper every single day. What do we expect in the budget? We expect them to come with these repeated promises of 1,000 officers. We expect them to come with more guns, more ammunition, more body cameras for police, etc., vehicles, etc., but with no delivery. So in this last year, last few months that they have, I expect more promises, but nothing to materialize, absolutely nothing.
Okay, one final question, and both of you can answer this, is that the government has said that there was less than 20,000 Venezuelan migrants in Trinidad and Tobago. How can the UN know and the government does not know, or do you think that they know but are ignoring it?
Well, I want to remind you that the United Nations has an office here in Trinidad and Tobago. They do not depend on statistics coming from the government. I'm almost certain that through their local representative here, through their local body, as well as speaking to their counterparts in Venezuela and elsewhere, they will have a fair idea of what is the migration levels here. Let us also not forget that even Trinidad and Tobago receives subventions, we receive assistance from the United Nations. And the United Nations doesn't go about giving away their subventions and so on all willy-nilly. They make sure they do their homework. So I'm almost certain that the United Nations would have done a comprehensive evaluation and assessment of the amount of migrants that are coming in here. Because far too often, I'm almost certain that the United Nations is inundated, their local office is inundated with requests for help. While we have called for government policy in light of now Trinidad and Tobago, the Prime Minister taking a hands-off approach, post this recent election in July, the UN office, I'm almost sure, is inundated with requests for assistance in one type or the other, in the absence of any plan in terms of how you are going to integrate, properly integrate. If you do choose to actually recognize these over 60,000, because they said at least 60,000. So I don't think that the United Nations would have put at least 60,000. I would encourage, especially the person who asked the question, that to read the report, go into the report. There's a lot that should also be raised that has not been raised. One of the things that really jumped out at me is when they said that they were trading guns and drugs for food, and that there's at least 60,000 migrants. So maybe you may wish to also reach out to the United Nations Office for Drug and Crime and ask them these questions. They are the authors of this. You should also be asking the government what is their position on this, whether or not they have trust, faith, and confidence in the information that has been put out by the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime. So I think those questions will be better posed to that agency and to the international body themselves, because I'm almost certain that they would not have put out a report without doing due diligence.
Is our report available online?
Yes, the report is online.
Right.
Let me just add to that. As MP Padarath said, at least the UN, it's always very careful and meticulous and does not exaggerate. As someone who's been on the ground in Trinidad and Tobago every single day, from Cedros Point 14 through Princess Town, through Barrackpore, coming up the road into Couva, Chaguanas, Aranguez, up in Matlot, across down in Diego Martin. There are everybody who's on the ground knows. There are far more than 100,000 Venezuelans here. The UN says at least, because a real survey cannot be done because there's no registration. The PNM has done nothing. People are inside, outside. And I'll also let you know that that is less than at the peak number, because anyone who knows and who's on the ground and situation and asking businessmen and contractors and workers and so on. Many Venezuelans return to Venezuela to suffer because they love their country and they prefer to suffer in Venezuela than suffer in Trinidad and Tobago under the PNM. They have returned, so the number is far greater, everybody knew, than 13,000. And finally, I want to ask Keith Christopher Rowley and his acting prime minister, the very African, the very black-oriented, since they like race in politics, Stuart Young, the acting prime minister, that man who's grassroots, that dashiki-wearing promoter of equality of the poor and that fighter for poor people. Stuart Young, your acting PNM prime minister. Is Christmas also in Trinidad going to be October 2nd? Because I see Maduro say Christmas on October 1st. Since you all are so hand in hand with Maduro, we ask you that question. Is Christmas in Trinidad and Tobago, does it remain the same? Or does it change? Because we are in the same dictatorship as Venezuela under the PNM dictator, Keith Rowley. We want to thank you all very much for paying attention. Stay tuned. The United National Congress is active across Trinidad and Tobago. We are on election footing. We need your support. The PNM has decimated our country. The next election is simple. You either vote for the PNM, the vindictive, heartless, arrogant, callous, incompetent PNM that has collapsed the economy, collapsed our country. The crime scourge has all of us running scared, or you vote for the rising sun under Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC. The choice is clear. Vote UNC. Thank you. God bless.
Everybody now, let's go.